Good evening, and thanks for joining tonight's TI Technology webinar hosted by Texas Instruments. Tonight we're going to take a look at helping your students on the ACT exam and this week with the TI-Nspire. We did this similar last week with the TI-84. The good news is that if you attended last week, I think you'll find some new things this week. My name is Mike Houston, and I'm the moderator for this event. I teach algebra, calculus, and chemistry near Pittsburgh, where I use TI technology to make tough to teach, tough to learn concepts accessible to all my students. And I'm really excited to be joined by our two panelists tonight, Kim Thomas and Veronica Carlson. Kim is a national board certified teacher who is currently teaching college algebra and BC calculus at Moon Valley High School in Phoenix. She is passionate about student exploration, understanding, communication, and engagement in the classroom. As a fun fact, Kim is on a mission to ban the word over in math class unless the intended meaning is a physical placement. I like that, Kim. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
And Veronica brings 35 years of experience as a high school math teacher, during which she has presented at national conferences and collaborated with educators across the country to integrate TI technology into their classrooms. Her work has helped teachers enhance student engagement and deepen mathematical understanding. Currently, Veronica serves as a systemic coach, partnering with teachers to refine instructional practices and improve student understanding of mathematics. Veronica, it's great to have you with us.
Happy to be here, Michael.
All right, Veronica, what are we going to do tonight?
So on our agenda, we want to share and hope people understand the ACT math test. And as you're going to learn, there's been some enhancements, or there's going to be, depending on when you take the test. Some geometry concepts, complex numbers, pattern problems, using the spreadsheet, graphing, and then all the participants that stay to the end, there'll be a webinar drawing.
Thanks so much, Veronica. And Kim, what can we expect to be able to do at the end of the webinar tonight?
So by participating in this webinar, we are planning that we can all teach students specific ACT test taking strategies for success. And in that, we can apply a variety of calculator skills in solving problems and preparing for the ACT exam. And then most importantly, in my opinion, is connecting those calculator skills to the concepts we teach in preparation for the exam, but also throughout the whole year.
Thanks so much, Kim. So tonight, many of you are already starting to use that chat window. We're using it to, for now, just say where we're joining us from. But later on, we'll be using it to send general messages. If you have any questions for Veronica or Kim, feel free to use that chat window. We'll do our best to get your questions answered live. As a reminder, the session is being recorded, and we'll provide a link not only to the documents that Veronica and Kim are using tonight, which are going to be super helpful and important, but also for the recording at the conclusion of the webinar. So without further ado, Kim, feel free to share your screen.
All righty. So greetings, everybody. And just to start things out, it will help us to know which test you are helping prepare your students. So there are a couple different choices here. Not that direction. Let's go forward again. Here we go. So we're calling the original ACT what is the classic ACT. So the original ACT, for example, at my school, I know that I'm preparing my students for the classic ACT. There is also the enhanced ACT. And so the enhanced ACT, will kind of explain how that rolls out pretty soon. But if you know that you're preparing students for the enhanced ACT, in the chat, you would be typing in the letter B. And then I didn't even know there was a new ACT, and that's pretty much the ACT. Then you would be typing in the letter C. So if you guys could just type in A, B, or C into the chat, and then I'm going to have Veronica tell me what we are seeing as our most popular answers.
We're getting a few C's, so
Okay.
that's awesome.
All right.
And some A's.
Okay.
B's and
Perfect.
A's right now.
So some A's, some C's, no
There's a
B's.
B.
Oh, there is a B. All right.
One B.
All right. So we've thrown out this word here, the enhanced ACT. What do we mean by that? So the ACT is making some changes, and these changes are being rolled out in a nice way. But basically, the overall summary is that they are reducing the total test by 44 questions. So as we look at all the subjects within the ACT, there will be 44 fewer questions. This is reducing the test length, and it is also reducing the time length. This will also increase more time per question, the way they have it set up. And in math, that's important for us, the number of choices are going from 5 to 4. And the other thing that is very different with it is that there will be an option to take the science part as opposed to being required to take the science part. What is staying the same? Well, we're still going to get a score from 1 to 36. There's no changing to the benchmarking. There's no state-specific achievement standard changes. Scores from tests taken prior to the rollout for the new composite score will not change. So they are going to change the composite score as this rolls out. And the ability to predict success in first-year college credit-bearing courses will not change because that is the intended purpose of the ACT there. So both paper and pencil and online tests will continue to be available. And I was at a meeting where a person very high up in ACT said they will always have a paper and pencil version option available. And all this information can be found at act.org, ACT enhancements. So Veronica, how's this being rolled out?
So it's a phased rollout of the enhanced ACT. And so this April, it's going to, if you're taking the test online, the national online test, going to a testing center, you're going to, you can choose to take the science test. And that's when the enhanced test will be given. So that's if I go to a testing center and take the test. In September of 2025, that's now the new update for everyone. So if you're giving a test at school and the whole school is taking the test, then you're still with, I'll say, Kim called it the classic. But it's if I'm an individual student, my school is not giving this exam, and I'm going to go to a testing center, that's going to be the enhanced. So big thing is that less questions, more time per question. September, it's going to be all the updated information, and then at September 2026, so a year, or spring, September 2026, a year from now, all the state and district testing will be with the enhanced. So that just gives you the timeline as to when, what type of test that you will be administering. Kim, it looks like there's a question. What is the advantage of not taking the science section?
So I'm going to encourage everybody to go to that website and really dig deep into how they're doing the scoring. But you have your standard 36 score, 1 out of 36, and there's a STEM score and there's an English subscore. I'm going to call it a subscore. So it's really just providing that option of taking that section or not, much like how writing is an optional test section. So now the science is going to be an optional test session. I know for me, in my state, in the state of Arizona, we have a separate state assessment for the AZ-Sci for the science portion. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it could be that we don't have to test students as much now that science will be optional on the ACT, since the ACT is our state test. So that, I think that's going to be a local decision for everybody.
Right. And that's
that
here
is
in
a
Arizona.
great question. And they've led us right into the next piece with the next question.
Well, Samuel
So,
has
Veronica?
asked a question. So, Samuel, you wanted to know, is it still 60 questions? And the enhanced test will not. The time is down a little bit, but we're going from 60 math questions to 45 and having 60 minutes to 50 minutes. And so previously, or on the classic, it's really not 1 minute per question because some of those questions are pretty quick. and you would answer them a little faster, which gives you a little bit more time for the um, questions toward the end, which tend to be more difficult. And that's going to be the same type of format. But now you have 45 questions as opposed to 60, and they did take off 10 minutes of time. You can see also with the classic, there were 5 choices. So if you're administering at school and it's a school-wide test, there'll still be those 5 choices and with distractors. Well, the enhanced will be 4. And so tonight we have a question. We have a combination of questions. We have 5 choices and 4 choices, and so you can see where we have a question very similar to one from the ACT website, or we have one that's similar to a test that was administered this past September. The reporting categories, they all look the same topic, but you can see that obviously, I'll say we're math people, that there's fewer math questions, so those percentages are automatically going to be increased, but there might be some that have a little bit more emphasis now. And the only one that I'll really speak to is that the field test, there was an extra section that oftentimes didn't get taken. And now the field test questions will be embedded. And I believe, is that 4 questions, Kim?
Yes,
Is that
it
what
works out to
you
be
read?
4
You learned?
questions.
Yeah. So you will have a PDF of all of our slides this evening, so you don't have to frantically write everything down. And so that'll be shared at the end of our webinar, or you can also get it, you'll get an email with it sent a link to you soon after the webinar tomorrow.
Cool.
So, all right. And then test prep strategies, Kim?
Yes. So we're going to be talking about all kinds of different test prep strategies as we are doing the problems. So we just wanted to kind of put some things, some reflective ideas in your head. So it's really important for me as I'm getting into test prep season with my students that they know the test structure. So my kids are taking the classic ACT, so I need to know that there's 5 choices, there's 60 problems, and that in the math section, they are statistically placed, easy, medium, difficult. And so my students know that they should be spending less time at the beginning, more time at the end, answer every single question. We want to practice with time tests in our classroom, again, as we're getting into test taking season, so that students kind of feel that pressure.
And Kim, I want to just point out that when you practice with time tests, it doesn't have to be the entire test. It could be a section of questions in a shorter amount of time to kind of get a buildup. And it is important for students, I believe it's important for students to kind of feel that pressure a little bit, in that, you know, a little stress to get things done correctly in that time frame, because then that hopefully they'll become accustomed to that when they take the actual ACT test.
Absolutely. As we're doing those practice tests, it's real important for kids to not do it as a one and done. So if I've timed them on 10 questions, sometimes I've picked 1 through 10 and I've given them 30 seconds per question. And sometimes I pick 10 questions and I put them in order like 1, 10, 15, 25, 30, 60. That's not 10 questions, but you get the idea. It's real important to go back and analyze our answers and figure out our problem solving strategies. So again, as we're doing test prep, it's not just one and done. It's also going back and analyzing our work and our thinking. And then the last piece, as we're doing that, building up a strategy for time management. When I talk to my students, the key is that I think that's the one thing they are most worried about. But if once they have a plan for that and they understand what they need to do, I think that relieves a lot of stress for them. So,
Exactly.
are we ready to work some problems?
Let's work some problems.
Okay, so, and as Veronica mentioned, we have a mix of questions. We have questions with 5 choices that are modeled from a past 2024 ACT exam. And we also have questions with 4 choices that are modeled off of the recent release of the enhanced ACT that you can find on that website that we talked about earlier. So here's our first one. We're going to talk about geometry. I'm going to kind of pose the question to the audience here. What do you know about geometry figures in the ACT? Is there any burning information that people already know?
Go ahead and use that chat and submit your answer there. Send it on in. What do you already know, if you know anything about the geometry figures?
That might be a really hard question. I
Sure.
know I start in my own classroom with geometry first, because I was a geometry teacher for many, many years and I still miss the subject dearly. But the one thing that I have to convince my students is that geometry figures are generally drawn to scale. So can it be assumed that they're always drawn to scale? So that is that always right in there is a little bit misleading, but in general, they are drawn to scale. And so I've had some friends that measure these pictures and it's off by 1 degree for an angle question. It's off by a millimeter for a segment question. So geometry figures, unless otherwise specified for the ACT, are generally drawn to scale. Unlike Mrs. Thomas's classroom, where I don't draw anything to scale. So, but these are generally drawn to scale. The other thing right now, so this is 4 choices. So this is going to be 1 out of 50 questions. So still in the beginning middle, we'll say. So this is not a very difficult question right here. Not a lot of tricks to it. But we also kind of need to address the item number. So the item number is 21. So we kind of need to go from here. They have all of this writing right here. And what is different as we looked at this question here is that there is no question mark on this enhanced question. And so I'm putting this question mark in here right now because they want to know what is BC, what is the length in centimeters of BC. So I'm definitely putting this right here so we can tell. And right off the bat, if I realize that they're generally drawn to scale, I'm thinking that BC has to be bigger than 7. And so thinking about that, 7 is off the table. And I can use my paper, I can use work paper, I can use my answer sheet, I can use my entrance ticket to measure that amount. And so that's what I'm modeling right here. And so I want to teach my students that. So I go and find some geometry figures and force my students to measure. Sometimes I'll take away all of the information just so that they will kind of give me some estimates. But this is kind of a really good strategy to work the problem faster. So if I were to double that 10, I can now eliminate 24 because now I've pretty much measured 20. In my mind, I went to the not the diagonals, but I went to those slanted segments first. And so I wanted to measure 26 and 25. Not the most efficient way to do this, I admit. But I can definitely see what 1 unit would be like in this picture. And it's 1 unit as a measurement is really kind of hard to do. I know I modeled this with students with a sticky note, but I can definitely now take off 24. If I'm a good estimator of distances, I'm probably eliminating 12 right now as well, but I'm going to go back to that 10 measure so that I can actually see that 17 would be the correct answer. So it is true that in the ACT, even though ACT tells you otherwise, their figures are generally drawn to scale. And I think that's a very good test taking tip. And I see a lot of things in the chat saying, you want to do some math.
Yeah.
Our participants really want to do some math here.
Right.
And so not to let you down here, we are seeing a lot of choices with Pythagorean theorem.
Yes.
And this question could be very timely in the sense that you have to do this first triangle and do a squared plus b squared equals c squared and take the square root, and that measure is going to be 24. It is a beautiful Pythagorean triple. This is something that I teach a lot when we're scaling triangles and looking at similar triangles. Again, I can eliminate the 24 here because it can't be on my figure twice, maybe. They didn't say this was a square. But I also want to kind of bring that up right now because we would call this 24 as a halfway answer. I don't know about you, Veronica, but I have had students
Yeah.
where they're so lost and they do something and they're so proud of themselves and they go and pick 24 right there and there.
Right. They think they're
And they
done.
know they're wrong.
Right.
And they know they're wrong. And I'm just like, why did you guess into the wrong answer? Like, it amazes me how many students will do that until we call that strategy out as being wrong. And then they don't do that again, we hope. We do have to do the second triangle. Again, it's not a straightforward Pythagorean theorem because we would have to do 25 squared minus 24 squared to get our 7. That's not as common as a Pythagorean triple, even though it's one that I point out to my students quite a bit. But then we can actually kind of add things up and get 17.
Right.
So I'm so happy that our participants in a Tuesday evening are ready to do some math and
They are.
jump to it. But we do want to remind people that geometry figures are generally drawn to scale. And
Right.
I know my kids will take the test on their Chromebook. I try really hard. Please make your screen be as bright as possible. Take that
Right.
work paper, put it on the screen. Go ahead and trace. Please don't press through the paper to where you're leaving an indentation on your screen, but they can do that. And reviewing Pythagorean theorem and Pythagorean triples is the #1 thing that I review with all of my classes around test taking time and college entrance taking time. So there's lots of reasons for that.
Right. Knowing those Pythagorean triples and being familiar is a time saver for sure.
So we have another geometry one. And Ms. Carlson, how would you do this one? Like as a math teacher?
We have 2 points and they are in a coordinate plane and we want to find the midpoint. So what I would do as a math teacher is go ahead and I would use the midpoint formula. But if, so do you want to demonstrate midpoint formula there?
Sure. So we have our midpoint formula. I know with my students, I still have some that don't know if they're supposed to add or subtract. They get it confused with slope.
Right.
But we're midpointing, right?
Right.
And then do we have to do both?
Well, let's see. If we do the first x coordinates, so I think you have that in there.
Yep. So
And
3 plus
so
13.
So we get 16 divided by 2 to give us 8. So right away, we can see we have 5 choices on this one. So it's a classic. We can eliminate all of those. And so then we have to do one more calculation because we have 2 with a numerator or not numerator, excuse me, with an x coordinate of 8. And then there we can see that we ended up with 2.
And very tricky again. 6 plus a -2 is 4. 4 is one of our answers up here.
Right.
And so students sometimes will pick the wrong answer, even though they should know what they're doing. But again, this is 22. It is just past the first third where I'm like having students work 30-second questions. So when students realize this should be an easier question, I like try to remind them, please look for some of the easy answers and pay attention to what you're doing. But we haven't touched our Nspire over here, but this question right here, there's so many different ways to address it in the classroom.
Well, what if the student forgot that formula?
And what if the student forgot the formula? Yes.
Right. So I'm going to take the screen and I'm going to share my screen, and I'm sharing screen number 2 on me. And here I am on my graph page. So just to start from the top, I'm going into my home page, a new document. I'm not going to save that one. And I'm going to go to a graphs page. And it sure would be nice if I had a coordinate grid on the background. And so I can do that. I'm going to go to menu, view, and grid. And I have a dot grid or a line grid. I'm going to go ahead and use that line grid. I'm going to take off that function line there. And I don't know if you know this, but I can come in here and I can just insert a point
Yeah,
by going point P or
P is for
P
point.
point.
And and I just want to point out this works for the TI-Nspire CX2.
Correct.
So this is a shortcut for the CX2. If you don't have a CX2, we would go into the menu, points and lines, and we would do points by coordinates. So we can definitely plot points on the normal TI-Nspire, the classic TI-Nspire. But the CX2, once I got a class set of those, let's press the P and see what happens. And the students are like, it's going to print. And I'm like, are you attached to a printer? And then they go, no, how about point?
Right.
So points by coordinates. Do you need
And we
help with the
have,
first coordinate?
well, we have the coordinate. So I'm going to
Okay.
select points by coordinate. And the first coordinate is 3. And I want to select enter and 6. There's 1 point. And I have my point tool is still active or on. And so I know that my second point is 13. Uh, do I have to push P
You
again?
have to press the parenthesis. And this is the hardest
Oh,
part for
that's right.
students.
The parentheses.
So if you have to open up your coordinate by pressing the right parenthesis button.
Right. And I closed my whole thing. So my other point is 13, enter, and -2. So I'm going to go maybe -2, enter. So I have my 2 points.
Wow,
Now
it scaled it for you.
it scaled it, has it, everything. Here is the directions, always in the upper left. If you
And
forget
it
what to
does tell
do,
you about the parenthesis.
yes, it does. It
So
does.
it
Or
does
press
remind
the
us what to do.
parentheses. So I don't need this tool anymore. So I'm going to turn it off by pushing escape. And I then can quickly go to menu and I can go to geometry. I'm in a coordinate graph plane, but I can go to geometry. And over here I can go to measurement. So I don't even
Not a
have
measurement.
to, oh, excuse me. I'm going to a
Construction.
construction. Sorry, construction. And I'm going to go to a midpoint and I can find the midpoint between these 2 points without the segment present. And I think it, nope,
It plotted it. I hit
well,
escape.
I have 2 points plotted.
Yeah, you
Okay.
pressed in. It's okay.
Okay. So I want the coordinate to show up though.
You have to hit escape one more time.
Okay.
There you go.
And then for the coordinate to show up, I have to go, I'm a right clicking, control menu, and I can have the coordinate show up there. So is it, which way is faster? That's going to depend on the student's knowledge of, do they have the midpoint formula memorized? Do they have it memorized correctly about finding the average? Or do they know their TI-Nspire calculator? Because you don't want that to be a hindrance on the test. But if they really know how to do this and they feel comfortable, go for it.
Well, and even by hand, I've taught students to draw a graph and do the best as you can for scaling and judge where the answer would be, because this question could be much more difficult. It could be a little bit, it could be more complicated than just finding the midpoint. But to have some conceptual understanding to do that, you know, Veronica, can you just go to one more page real quick?
Sure. Graph
Just
page?
because, yeah, just to add one more graph page.
Okay.
And let's just hit P one more time. So
Yes.
we got to get out of that graph entry
Yep.
by hitting escape, and then P for plot point,
Mm-hmm.
points by coordinates. And we're just going to do -3, -7.
-3, enter, -7, enter,
And then right paren.
right parent, or left parent.
Oh, I guess it's left paren. Sorry.
Yeah.
And let's do 7, 10.
7, enter, 10, enter.
And it would keep on doing that, but we're going to hit escape.
Mm-hmm.
And then menu, and you're constructing a midpoint. So we did not put a segment down here.
No, don't
We're
have to.
just, we don't have to. So we're just constructing a midpoint, which I think is just so beautiful. And what's really cool is you start on a point and you can see the distance build before she marks that.
Mhm.
And then we would need to hit escape
Right.
to get out of that because it's going
Now,
to
I
keep on
think there
doing
was
that.
a right click option. I think that's come up in the chat.
Right. We would need
I'm
to
on
hit
it.
that control menu.
Right. So I have a mouse, but you can go control menu. That's a context menu. And
It
oops,
doesn't work on the emulator. This
no,
is the
I have to
one
use,
thing where I have to really remind students that they are hitting control, then menu when you're hovering over that point. But for us on the teacher software, we just right click and then we get all kinds of options.
yes. And I have to be on the point,
Yes,
and there it is.
which is beautiful.
So you don't even need to have the grid back there. I just wanted to make sure our participants knew about how to get the grid.
Yes. So the next question, can you use tab rather than enter? No. And this is the one time that tab
Right.
does not work for us.
Now, you can also go to menu, geometry, points and lines, points by coordinates. So you can get it that way as well instead of pushing P. Because I know I can do it, but if I forgot, oh, what do I do again? I can also go get that tool that way as well.
Cool.
Okay.
All righty. So a tool for teachers to use as they're teaching these concepts in their classrooms.
Correct.
So it's not always just about test prep, but it's providing those opportunities and even beyond the geometry classroom or the other algebra classes that might be doing midpoint. So, all right.
Hey, working with some complex numbers. So,
Yes.
Kim and I want to make sure that you guys all realize that we do have the number I with the TI-Nspire, and but it is not the letter I. And so, um, down by the pi key, we kind of call that the number key. So if Kim, she's over there in a graph page, you can see that you have the pi, and then there's the imaginary I. And if you would push enter there, Kim, and then enter again. And now let's do the letter I and see what the differences are. And it's saying, oh, that's a variable and it's not defined. And just say okay. I think that it still will show up on the screen. And you can see, and I don't know if you want me to do that, Kim, to just share, but it's the number I is bold, and that's the difference. So you would know if a student is having an error, or they're going to know it, well, it won't work if they're using the letter I. But so if you forgot, I used to call it an eye chart, um, for to simplify this, or whatever the students are doing, they can just literally enter this into their calculator to get the result.
Which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So this problem is number 18. It's
Kind
4
of
choices, so it's
middle of the
on
road.
the enhanced one. So it's still towards the front of the test.
Yeah.
And we have a couple samples here. This is from the classic exam where they're telling us I scored is -1. So ACT is always kind of telling us things about I, and this is just combining like terms and we can type it in exactly. But the question we really want to focus in is this one right here. It's a little bit more complicated.
And
So
so there's a feature that we have on the TI-Nspire, and sometimes students think it's part of an absolute value symbol, but if you go, Kim, control equals, I think, and there we have our inequalities, but we also have a vertical line there, and that is our such that. And that's what we are going to use um, to determine the solutions here. So,
we're going to do classic substitution.
yes.
So I could graph this and find out that all my answers are, well, they're all imaginary, so it's not going to
Yep.
cross the x-axis.
Right.
It would be, and this is question 45 in the classic test. So this is towards the end.
Yes.
But we're doing x plus 2 quantity squared plus 1. I am looking for the answer of 0. So we're
Right.
going to do control equals, and using the such that, I would like to know what happens when x is equal to, and I'm going to work these backwards. I'm going to go from the
Yep.
bottom up, and I'm going to type in 0 plus 5i.
5i. Yep.
And I'm getting I from my pi. They rhyme. And it's not correct. It's not 0. So I
It's
know
not
to move
0.
on.
So Kim, we can also be sure to use that copy feature where you arrow up, you select what you want to copy, push enter, and it will copy. And now we can edit. And so now instead of having 0, we have -1 um, plus I.
And I'm going to write it as 1i because I'm kind of looking ahead. Maybe I
Yep.
want other choices there.
Yep.
Still not right.
Still not correct. And so copying that,
So
pasting it
something my
again.
students will try is they'll try the edit when it's here. They're thinking this is very computer-like. I'm like, no, you got to bring it down to the entry line.
Right. Enter. It has to be enter. And then do you want to do the -2 plus I radical 5? We'll just go in order.
Plus I root 5, knowing where the square root is. And still, I got a real answer, but it's still not 0.
Nope.
And another thing my students will do is I'm going to go ahead for this next one. It's -2 plus I, right?
Correct.
I'm going to show you the other place my students get I from.
Yet.
They will use the book. And in the book, the symbols
Look
live
at
in
the,
4.
right. And notice, do you see the tabs up there? You can also get your math templates in I. Symbols are in 4. So going to the catalog, you can find everything. And there is the number I right up there next to pi and e.
And we
And so
finally got 0.
there you go.
So we now know our correct answer. But this idea of substituting in values, that's the heart of algebra. Like students have
Right.
been substituting in values for a very, very long time. So using the such that right here is just a really good way to reinforce substitution, but also to show it with a technology tool. So if I've used such that at the very, very beginning, when I'm checking algebra answers,
Right.
I have the skill to help with the ACT problems right now.
That's right. So you're already building, it's not that, okay, we're going to stop and do this and we're going to do, because you should be getting ready and learning about the ACT throughout the whole year. And so you can check your answers. I mean, what a great way to show that. And students are already knowing if they're on the right track or not. So I like that.
All right.
Embedding that throughout the year, embedding the use of the tool.
All right. Our next one is pattern problems. So I'm going to go ahead and read this question out loud. The first 5 terms of an arithmetic sequence are 6, 21, 36, 51, and 66. Let t sub n represent the nth term of the sequence. What's the value of t sub 25? And I know, like, I trained my students, please don't read the question like that. Jump to the back, like, what is the value of t25? I now know my choices represent t sub 25, and now I can go look at the problem, and that will make me work the problem faster in this time setting. So sometimes I have to stop myself and remind myself of that strategy. And we're going to pretend that we don't know the formula for an arithmetic sequence, because I want something that all my students can access. Maybe they're just having one of those days or moments where they just need to have an easy way to do it. I know for me, before I move on, I'm going to go into doc on my TI-Nspire, and I'm going to go to number 4, which is insert, and I'm going to insert a new problem, because I really don't want the previous problem to interfere with this next problem. And so that is something that I have worked with my students forever from the beginning of the year. Add pages, add problems, start over. Please do not delete. Please do not turn on the calculator and start with a new document. But this is one of those places where I can put that in there for my students. And so I'm going to add a calculator. And what's the difference here, Veronica?
We'll notice up at the tabs, we had 1.1 and 1.2, but now we have a 2.1. So it's a whole new problem. So anything from 1.1 and 1.2 that we did, we defined variables, we had a solution, anything. Now in 2.1, clean slate. It is a whole new problem. And so any of this from the previous work is not here, but it's still available to go back and review or look at. But now it's we're starting over, so to speak.
So we have 6 and 21. It's an arithmetic sequence. So I'm thinking that my students are going to do 21 minus 6.
Find this.
And they're going to find the common difference. That's the pattern here.
Yep.
I am going to add a new page now, still within this, because now, and again, it's faster to use a formula. I agree that algebra is really important, and I am going to teach good algebra all year, but when it comes to test taking, or if I'm tutoring that one kid, sometimes, honestly, kids tell me these strategies.
Right.
It took me a while to accept a lot of these things.
Well, and sometimes in a stressful moment, they forget, but they
Mhm.
know how to use their tool. So I agree. We want, as math teachers, we want our students to use the mathematics. But these are some strategies that if they're um, having a difficult time and, just a brain block that happens, especially in stressful situations, this is another strategy that they could fall on and use.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in the number 6. That's my first term. And then I am going to, and I don't have to do this way, but I'm going to do it this way to really emphasize. I'm going to take my previous answer, A and S, and I'm going to add 15 to it because I know that's the common difference. So this is the second time I've done this. I'm getting 21, then the third time, then the fourth time, then the fifth time, then the sixth time. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I have the answer. Notice how I had the previous, I have some other things in there. So not how I really want to have my students do this problem all the time, but honestly, this is how I teach sequences to my students in the beginning to get them at this repetitive addition and this iterative motion right here. Students will sit there, oh, how far can I get? And then I'm like, well, how far did you get? I don't know, because you have to count that much.
Kim, I'm just going to respond to Filberto. I think you need to just look to the left of the screen, and her calculator is being displayed there. So we're trying to show the problem and the calculator at the same time. So hopefully you're seeing it over there. It's a little bit smaller, but she's showing the steps there. So we were very intentional that we wanted to have the problem on display and the calculator. So we're just showing the calculator and not the full emulator. So hopefully, Gilberto, you can see that.
Got that. So that's one way to do this.
Right.
We have another question though. So we wanted to make sure that we had a whole variety of things, and we talked about specific strategies with calculators. Again, when I introduced this to my students the first time, I am using this constant adding
Sure.
type of idea. So we can go find the difference, use answer, the previous answer plus that's difference until you get to 25th term. It requires a lot of attention to detail. It's not my favorite strategy, but I have some students that love that strategy, and I
Sure.
want to value and show them that their ideas are important with that too.
That's right.
So we
And
have this other one.
Jay even says it's a constant adder. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is a good introduction so that students can see the repetitiveness of it.
Yeah. Here's another problem that was also a sequence. First four terms of a sequence are shown, and they gave me the formula this time. And so I'm going to do this again. I'm going to hit doc. I'm going to insert. I'm going to add a new problem. And I am going to graph this. I'm a fan of graphing for this particular problem. And this is not a function. It is a sequence, which is a function. So I'm going to rephrase that. It's not a function in the sense I'm not using f of x. And so in your calculator from this menu, you can press menu and you can change your graph entry line. And we want to
Yes.
change this to sequence. Now in my classroom, I have a couple students that love to press menu, graph entry, and they're going to sequence, not scatter plot. But for me, what I teach them is from this line right here, we hit control menu. That's your right click again. And we're going to change our graph entry line to sequence. And now we're in sequence mode. So what is my sequence that we're going to graph? Well, we have a recursive sequence going on here. And so I need to be able to write this a sub n minus 1. And to do that, I'm going to hit, there is no variable yet. So I'm going to use U1. So sequences are U's. So I'm going to do U1 of n minus 1. Close that parenthesis. And again, we're up here on the screen right here. And then we're going to add in n minus 1. So where's my n? N minus 1 quantity squared. So what I've done is I've written in the sequence right here. And they're asking us for n greater than 2. We have initial condition right here of 4. And so we have some different things that we can do. So if I want to put that initial condition in here of 4, I'm going to put the 4 right there. And I'm seeing, I think I may be a mistake. We'll see on our handout. And we have some stuff going on here, right? Now, I don't have my students do this very often, but I do have my students do window zoom fit for sequences because that's the window I get. I
And
was
especially in a
expecting
time situation.
yeah, but I was expecting a quadratic. There's a quadratic. I have a beautiful view right there. And again, what are some other strategies that students could use? So I could type that in if we know about sequences. That is throughout our algebras. We want to know what the 6th term is. And there's so many different ways we can do this. We could do menu trace and we can
I think
graph
that's
trace.
pretty quick.
There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. I'm checking my values right there. There's 5, there's 6, and I'm just typing in the numbers. What I would like to do though, what my students do quite a bit, and they do this more than I do, they know T is for table, and table starts with T. And so they will press Control T. And since I have integer values right here, I can go to the 6th value and get our 59.
Nice.
So there's lots of different values to do that right there. And we definitely do have a halfway answer in here. Jay is noting that, hey, the 5th term is 34, and there's a distractor right there.
Yep.
And we do have to make sure that students are paying attention and not to fall for that halfway answer.
Right. Answering the question.
Cool. All right. Let's see what's next. So plot the sequence, press Control T. You could plot that as a function as well, meaning in function as a continuous graph. But I do like to use sequences as discrete points using the sequence graphing for that.
Well, and we're also trying to show with our participants some calculator use of the TI-Nspire that maybe they were not familiar with as well. So I think these are
Absolutely.
excellent examples. Michael has shared also with everybody about the ACT live, and it is for 84, but that doesn't mean you still can't watch it to go get great example questions and then utilize them for your TI-Nspire. And Marco has also talked about, the trace and table features are great options. So yeah, we demonstrated both of those. Okay.
All right, so we've moved on to this question 41, which is a hard question on the enhanced ACT. And I
Right,
don't want to
only
work
4
this
choices.
problem out because we have another problem that I think is more worthy of more time. But I do want to point out for our questions here, when they have numbers, they're in descending order or ascending order. If they're words, they have some type of visual feel to them that is pleasing to the eye. These numbers are not in numeric order. And so one thing that you do want to point out to our students is structure. In general, the choices should be in order. And I would argue these are in a pattern of orders, 20, 15, 10, and 1/8, but they are not in value order. So that is something for students to debate, and different students will get that nuance or not. So I just wanted to point that out with this question, because I think it's time to go to graphing. Do we want to do some graphing, Veronica?
Yes, we are quickly coming to the end of our webinar.
We want to graph instead of use the spreadsheet?
Well, I think we have time for both if we're.
Let's graph first and then use the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Since I said graphing.
Yes.
All right, this next question on the
Well,
interval
and this
from
is
0
also
to
question
180.
59 too, so that's great.
Yeah. On the interval from 0 degrees to 180 degrees, what are the real solutions to this mess right here? And so I am going to dock insert a new problem, and I'm going to go to a graph, and I'm just going to type this in. And we have 2 cosine of x minus 1 times the cosine of x plus 1. And I just typed it on my keyboard, but we definitely have the trig menu in there. And notice I'm in radian mode, and this says degrees. It's a beautiful graph. Some kids will go, wow, I've never seen anything like that.
Right.
But how do I get to degrees, Veronica?
So you can just go up to that radian up there and then just click it.
I broke it.
You're in degrees
But
right
I
now.
broke it. It's a line. What happened?
Well, why don't we need to look at that interval? And that interval is from 0 degrees to less than or equal to 180 degrees.
Okay.
So on your graph, you can just grab it and move it. But I love just double clicking in there. You're selecting it. It says text. It tells you're in the right spot. Once you've selected it, that it's totally kind of blue, just like when you select a word and when you're word processing. Now we can put in a number and what would be a reasonable number to put in there.
I'm going to put 200 because I did not restrict this function. So I feel like I should see all of the pieces and parts around it. So I'm going to pick 200.
We want to go a little beyond. We don't want to be right at the edge. And wow, look at that. So we see a couple of things.
Might be 2 answers. There. Oh, it has to be 2 answers. All my choices have 2 answers. So scanning and looking at my answers could help me with this problem.
Right away, if there was only one, if there were some with only one answer, we knew we could eliminate those choices.
So 0's out. It's not crossing at 0.
Right.
So my question is it 30 or 60?
Yes.
I'm going to bet on 60. But this is one of those things where I would even give this to freshmen who have never seen a sine, cosine, or tangent.
Sure.
As long as they know how to work their calculator, because what am I asking for? I'm asking for the zeros.
That's right.
And so I can analyze my graph. I can go find the 0, and I can find my first one, which is 60, which I kind of guessed. And then I can go back into menu, analyze, find my second 0. And I needed that space to get that 0. That was also my other reasoning for that.
Right.
So that's just something, making sure kids are cognizant of their mode and being able to work with all kinds of graphs. And I see Samuel is saying, would such that be a good feature? And you know what, Samuel? I am going to honor that right now. I'm going to just do some fancy stuff on my calculator here. So I'm copying this down. And if I hit that such that button right there, that is how I restrict and do a piecewise graph. So I can actually say from 0, control equals less than or equal to x, control equals less than or equal to 180. And might be a little bit harder to see right here. So I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit more. We can we can see that we could restrict that with the such that. So I think the such that in this case, because we were finding a 0, would actually cause more problems because there's nothing for the calculator to calculate beyond. But if I wanted to restrict it, that's where that would be. All right. Do we have time for one more?
We're at 5:56, so why don't we could make sure they know where to
How
find
about
the matrix.
matrix?
Yep, a matrix template.
And
And
so
here you see 2 matrices, and pretty much every graphing device has matrix templates. And so next to the catalog, next to the book, you see there's the template feature, and you have a template of a 4, and then 2, and 2 in a row and 2 in a column. And so you can select that 4, or you can go create a custom size if you need. And then we have it right there. You simply enter it in, and you have to just pay attention to what is your A and your B. I wouldn't store them at this point. You could, but you just want to enter in, and there is A, and we're subtracting B. And Kim, by the time I'm done talking, she already has found the answer. So matrices are still around. This is from a more recent test. It won't be part of the enhancement this time because there's 5 choices, but we just wanted to make sure you knew where that matrix template was. And do you want to show the other place where we can get the matrix template?
The
in
other
menu?
place that we can get them is just straight up in the menu. There is a matrix and vector menu.
Yeah.
Where,
You
like,
want to
I've just taught
create?
a unit in matrices in my upper level class. And so you're just going to go into matrix, and then you get this menu to where you can create it. And so students can select, this is where tab is helpful. You can select what kind of matrix you want, and then you can, this is where my students will hit arrows. You have to get to the OK, and then you can just type in what you want.
Right.
So there is a menu for matrices, which has all the stuff in there.
Yep.
Or I think for test prep, I think it is easier for students. And most of my students even just went to this menu right in
Yeah.
here unless they needed a command.
Using that math template.
Yeah. So we hope tonight we've given you some ideas where there are some specific calculator skills and where they fit in your teaching in your classroom. Are any of these, how do any of these enhance the curriculum that you teach, and where? And how can you build some practice for your students to learn and extend these calculator skills as they are learning and extending their math knowledge?
The more that they are familiar with this TI-Nspire, that's going to help be a time saver for them when they take the real deal. So thanks so much for being with us tonight. I think, Michael, you have a couple of reminders and a giveaway.
Let's get straight to the giveaway. So tonight's lucky winner is Jim Schiffman. Jim, congratulations. Start thinking about what calculator you want. I'll be reaching out to you soon to get some information from you. To receive a certificate of attendance, click the link in the chat window. Also listed above that is a link for the documents for tonight. And if you're missing this for any reason, just hang tight. Like Veronica said at the very beginning, you'll automatically get a follow-up email, which will contain links to the recording, the documents, and the certificate of attendance. And if you're watching this on demand, copy that link into your favorite browser to receive your certificate. Huge thanks to Kim and Veronica for everything they put together for tonight. Documents are going to be super helpful as well. So thanks so much for that.
Good night. Thanks for joining us.
Have a good night, everyone.